trying to multitask here because we're wait. We have our guest in the room. I did not see that. Okay, cool. We were going to start sending an email. All right, so we are on the air. I know. I can hear the music. This is the Grass is Greener on WXRW 104.1 FM in Milwaukee. I am the host of the program, Gary Grass. With me is my co-host, Babette Gruneau.
Hi, and tonight we have Jim Carpenter as our guest. He is with Peace Action, and he
we don't mention that organization anymore.
and he often does a lot of work with Congress people and the legislators, and trying to tap some understanding of issues into their heads. And so he is with us tonight to tell us about some lobbying on the BDS movement. He is also a professor at the MATC.
Yeah. Hi. Oh, okay. Oh, he's here. Hi, Jim.
Welcome, Jim.
Hi, Babette. Hi, Gary.
Okay.
We can't hear him yet. Hold on.
Well,
You can't hear me? Oh.
You're coming in pretty weak, I would say.
Last time I was here, I was so loud. How you were like holding your eardrums.
Yeah.
Remember that? You had to tell back up. Now I'm closer.
All right. Well, I'm not sure what.
How's it now?
That's a little better.
I'm.
How about now?
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got you boosted all the way up, but we'll have.
How's this?
Yeah. Well, people can hear you at least. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it'll be good enough, right? It's.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know what's going on audio on your end there, but at least we can hear you. I guess we wanted to talk about there's this lobby day tomorrow. Apparently, asking the legislature to repeal. We have an Anti BDS statute on the books here. I mean, actually, we've had it for a long time. I don't know if you want to just start by introducing exactly what that is. I mean, I know a little bit about it myself.
Well, it's called Wisconsin Act 248. It was actually introduced from the Assembly side in the 2017 Assembly Bill 553. Let me read some of the handouts that we were passing out. Wisconsin Act 248 prohibits state and local governments from entering into any contracts with any entity that engages in, quote, refusal to deal with Israel if the refusal is intended to penalize, inflict economic harm on, or limit commercial relations with Israel. So that's the handout we passed out. But let me read directly from the Assembly bill. It's called, and I'll read what's.
Well, I mean, it's not a bill anymore. It's in the statute books. I mean, this is these bills are from 8 years ago.
Oh, it passed. It's a statute. That's correct. It's now part of our law.
Yeah. I mean, it's this has been sitting there in chapters 16 and 20 of the statutes ever since then, and even prior to that, that was already the law of the state because it was originally passed as an executive order from Scott Walker.
That's right. Well, you're doing your homework. Very good.
Yeah,
But most of us who haven't been paying that much attention, myself included, had no clue it was in there.
Well, a lot of legislators probably have no clue it's in there. That's one of our tasks tomorrow is saying, hey, did you know this legislation even exists? A lot of people, legislators, especially new legislators included, probably don't even know it exists. And so we're trying to alert them to this. The idea is if they knew it existed, they would be opposed. It's basically saying you cannot use your economic power to stop criminal activity. And that's the way I look at it. I think a lot of other people look at it like that, too. I mean, we can all agree here on this show, I think, that Israel is committing hideous crimes by bombing Gaza, by committing genocide, by blowing up children, burning them alive, burying them under the rubble, destroying 90% of the homes. And these are crimes against humanity. Israel is committing them. Don't we have the right to try to stop crimes by our economic activity?
Yeah, I mean, it is in some sense a power grab by the state to take over that decision from the people. Now, I mean, individuals can still engage in boycott activity. I mean, that's not rendered unlawful by this.
That's right. You don't have to, if you have an Israeli product, you don't have to buy it as an individual. You don't have to, you don't have to sell them something as an individual. As a company, if you're a company and you try to stop buying Israeli products, and it can be shown that you're doing it not because it's a good business decision, but because you want to oppose their crime of genocide, that would be illegal. If you have if you at least you would lose your. I wouldn't say you would lose your state contract if you had a
Right.
contract over $100,000.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
would be penalized by the state for engaging in this moral activity.
Yeah, I mean, there's two basic sections of the law. The part that's in Chapter 20 says that state agencies and local government cannot involve themselves in boycotts. And then there's a section that's in Chapter 16 says, when the state bids on stuff, it has to accept the low bid for a service that they're buying, right? They have a process that they go through, and this has been part of the law for a long time. It's basically good governance, where if the state is going to buy something, they don't buy it from the governor's brother and pay twice what it's worth. They go through a process where they solicit bids and they take the lowest bid that meets the criteria that they have. But they have this little exception to that, right? They've got a series of exceptions to that, but they added this one exception in that says that we will not take something if the bid is over $100,000 and this whoever it is engaged in a boycott activity, right? Mm-hmm. And so this will force the state sometimes to pay more because they have to rule out all the companies that are engaged in boycotts. And in fact, it isn't just the parent company that has to be engaged in a boycott. If you are trying to, if the state wants to buy fruit juice for a prison, right, and the fruit juice company is owned by another country that also owns a tractor division or something, because you've got these massive firms with all sorts of things, and they say the tractor division isn't selling Caterpillar tractors or whatever type of thing that over to Israel because they don't want to bury people alive with their equipment. Then you could say, then the entire corporation, none of its arms, can get a contract if even one segment is engaged in boycott activity. And so it's got these different components, and it's like, I mean, I can see 100 ways this legislation could be watered down to be made more legitimate. And I really think there should just be legislation that says we don't sell you anything if you're not boycotting Israel, right? I mean, I think that should be the rule. But they've taken that choice away from local governments. They've taken it away from state agencies.
They've taken it away from business. It takes their choice away. If they want the government contract, then they have to have the business with Israel.
Well, I mean, they don't have to have business with Israel, and they don't need. But
they can't boycott.
Yeah, well, they can boycott. They can still exist, but they can't get state contracts, right? And that's.
If they want the contracts.
No. I mean, they get small contracts, right? They can get a lot of little contracts. They just can't get big contracts, and that's for some companies that's fatal. So we have you still there, Jim? Because I don't see your picture anymore.
I wanted to see my picture. Anyhow.
All right.
I thought maybe I would.
Well, you're such an attractive man. I'd hate to, our listeners on the radio don't get to see it, but I mean we get it.
Well, I thought it would improve the sound quality if I took out the video. Sometimes that's the way it works.
No.
It's the head of our station came and fiddled with the
it's not
stuff
it's not a bandwidth issue, but
it sounds better now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. Hey, but I want to take off on something that you brought up, Gary, which I thought was very incisive, actually. I mean, you said it kind of tongue in cheek, but in reality, I think it's very clever. You said that you shouldn't get a contract if you do engage with Israel. So, let's make an analogy here. Let's pretend this is World War II and you're supplying the Nazis with steel. uh, I don't think the United States would want to give you a contract if your business is supplying the Nazis.
Well,
So
well, I mean, there were U.S. companies that were doing that, before the war, and even as the war was getting started, they were still, sending them stuff. I mean,
yeah, but
you know,
most people think that was a tragic that our
Right.
companies were fueling
yeah.
the Nazis as the Nazis were doing their thing.
And then,
I
and,
think
then
you probably,
the guy who's one of the guys who was doing it, his nephew gets elected president. So it's like it wasn't that damaging, yeah, but it's no, we have a bad history of some of that. But it's like, but you're absolutely right. I mean, there's we are supposedly try to adhere to international law here. We have an obligation as a country to be opposing genocide instead of funding it, instead of sending them weapons and intelligence to carry it out. And this is just one more little piece of that where we guarantee. I mean, and we don't have any rules like this for other countries. We don't have a provision that says we won't send arms to people in the Congo that are engaged in genocide, or we won't have contracts with them, or we won't deal with businesses that are engaged in that. It's only Israel, and it's only in favor of continued economic relations with them while they're committing a genocide. And I think there's one thing that can be argued to legislators at this point who may not know this thing exists is, I mean, this is an old piece of legislation. This is something that's been sitting around for a while. And you could easily argue at this point, well, circumstances have changed, right? Maybe they could tolerate what Israel was doing at the time that this passed. I mean, I think it was intolerable, but maybe they can tolerate it. But at this point, it's just so egregious. It's so obvious. And it's so much worse now. And so many people are aware of it. And public opinions have shifted on this.
Yeah.
Right.
right.
So I mean, go ahead.
When they did pass it in 2017, they weren't in committing genocide at that point, but they were engaged in.
Well, not like they are now.
Not like they are, but they were engaged in apartheid for sure, right?
Right.
So it wasn't that they weren't breaking international law; they were breaking international law. And we have a duty to uphold international law.
Yeah.
So even in 2017, it was outrageous that this was passed. I mean, the point is, it was passed because we want to. We oppose it because we want to stop genocide, not because we're opposed to Jewish people. It's not. So it's not anti-Semitic. It's anti-genocide.
Well,
what we're trying to do.
I will say that the one of the things that is kind of generating anti-Semitism right now is this. There's a lot of people online now that I see that look at all of these like bills that we have to protect Israel and all these the way we're using anti-Semitism as an excuse to go after people and deport them and to take away their rights and to limit free speech and all these other stuff. And they say, well, it's like, don't do all that in the name of protecting Jewish people, right? That's you're just causing Jewish people to wind up getting blamed for all this stuff, right? It's not being done at the behest of Jewish people. It's being done at the behest of mostly Christian Zionists, right?
That's correct. Someone made a statement the other day that I was surprised, and when I heard it, but I assume it to be true, is that there's actually more Christian Zionists than there are Jewish Zionists.
There are more Christian Zionists than there are Jews.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Far more Christian Zionists than there are Jews. Most Zionists are by definition not Jewish because there's just not enough Jews to make up the ranks. I mean, there's and there's
many do not go with.
There are many anti-Zionist Jews, right?
Yeah.
And even among Jews that would still consider themselves Zionists and still would say that they're in favor of having Israel, they still many of those people will look at what Israel's doing right now and says, well, I'm ashamed of Israel right now because I do identify with Israel, but I don't identify with what they're doing.
Exactly.
So
yeah, I mean, it's a good question for this topic. A good debate question. Does Zionism mean that you're simply in favor of the state of Israel existing, or does Zionism mean you're in favor of the state of Israel expanding according to this theory of greater Israel as supposedly stated in the Bible? So I guess there's different brands of the Zionism concept.
I mean, you can go back to the roots of the Zionist movement and look at all the things that the foundational Zionists said they believe in, or you can just take a sort of a rough definition and say, well, this is basically a form of nationalism that believes that Jews are a people, a nationality, that they need to have a state, and that it's a form of nationalism for Jews. And like many forms of nationalism is not necessarily a bad word. It can just mean patriotism of some sort, but it can also be ultra-nationalist. I mean, Hitler was a profound ultra-nationalist, right?
Yeah.
So it's there is, I think, anytime you have some sort of national sentiment, there's a seed for potential abuse there. And I think right now you have, Israel has become more and more fascist over the years.
Yes.
People who consider themselves liberal Zionists have mostly been crushed politically within Israel. Many of them have fled the country, and so you now have a situation where a lot of Zionism is represented by the far right, and
people like Ben Gvir, Smotrich.
Miriam Adelson,
Folks who are farther right than Netanyahu himself.
I mean, and again, most Zionists aren't Jewish, right? They're Christian, right? They fundamentally believe in supporting a Jewish state in the Middle East for reasons that don't have to do with some sort of patriotic sentiment towards
no, they want to bring about
their
the
people.
second coming.
Right.
The Christian Zionists do, and so they see Israel just as one.
Well, that's one big part of it.
One step.
Yeah, that's one big part of it.
Yeah, one step in
And
bringing.
the irony is, and if I'm not mistaken, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but the irony of that is that the Christian Zionists don't really want Jews to stay Jewish. They want them to convert, and that this second coming, as part of this, will lead to their conversion, or else they don't see heaven. And I think that's the idea.
I think we should be careful about speaking for all Christian Zionists, because I think none of us in this room are even remotely close to being a Christian Zionist.
That's true. That's true.
But you do have at least one strain of Christian Zionism, which is wants to bring about the apocalypse, and believes that there will be the tribulation, and that man will be divided into warring segments, and that some of the righteous Jews will convert, and the rest of them will be struck down and all go to hell, and and there's this whole thing that's supposed to play out, and then you've got people like Joe Biden, who are not particularly religious, not really millenarian. They're not trying to bring about the end of the world. They just happen to be very good at doing that because they're in positions of power, and or was right, and I think his Zionism was basically political, right? It's he's always been a great lover of Israel because he saw this as something that served a foreign policy benefit for the United States. And there's an argument to that effect. There's also an argument that says they've been an extremely poor ally, that it has hurt the United States foreign policy immensely to have embraced Israel, and that it's cost us much, much more diplomatically and monetarily than it's benefited us in any way at all.
Certainly hasn't benefited the Middle East in terms of the number of people killed in wars, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you've got perpetual war in the Middle East, and the U.S. likes to start those things, right? Too. It's some of it is Israel, and some of it is the United States.
It started on behalf of Israel, because.
But a lot of it started on behalf of Israel, right? And the last.
I mean, I think it's really complicated. And I think I think that there are people out there that want to blame Israel for all of this stuff and let the United States off the hook. And I think that a lot of this is I mean, it feeds into what the leadership of Israel wants and what many of the people in Israel want, but it serves other objectives for the people, Christian Zionists want it for one thing. The arms industry wants it just because it'll sell them, get them to sell a lot of weapons. Certain people in politics want it, for one reason or another. Some of them are maybe blackmailed. Some of them are maybe true believers. And it's there's a whole anti-communist group that wants this all, and there's think tanks that want it. And it's like they all have their own motivations that they bring to this. I don't want to reduce it down too much.
You can't paint it with one brush. You're absolutely correct on that one. I mean, there's very few things that they don't have these subtleties to it, right? So you can't. You got to. Yeah, it's a mixture of many things.
I think it's kind of funny. A lot of times when you're on, Jim, it seems like you take over the show as interviewer and you ask me questions, and I serve as the expert while you ask me a bunch of questions.
Well, I have to say you are pretty knowledgeable about this. You got me on, but I don't know if I've said anything that you don't already know, and you've actually educated me on a couple points that I should take into account, especially about these. If you have a business and the business has certain what do you call it, subsidiaries that are doing business with it, that are boycotting Israel, then all the products of all the parts of that business can be subject to.
And the boycott doesn't even need to be directed at all of Israel. It can be directed at a region in Israel, or a region controlled by Israel, which they make a specific reference. I mean, they're basically saying we don't. If you have a boycott that's just directed not against all Israeli things, but just directed at things made by illegal settlers in the occupied territories, right? Because SodaStream had plants in the West Bank that they were like on settler land, right? And they were like making their products in illegally stolen territory, that's outside of Green Line Israel, right? That specifically is covered in the statute. So you can't even have a limited boycott against the worst offenses. It even says an Israeli individual, you cannot boycott a particular Israeli company run by a particular Israeli firm, even if it's not about the genocide, even if it's just maybe about the guy who runs the company happens to be a pedophile who escaped the United States and got asylum in Israel, right? You still can't boycott even him. Right? It's not just general boycotts against Israel. It's boycotts that impact Israel in any way. I mean, so it's really very, very, very broad. And I think I think
Larry, you should be on you should go to the. You're very good at this. You should go to Lobby Day tomorrow.
I'm thinking of going to Lobby Day tomorrow. but people need to know, if they're thinking of going to Lobby Day tomorrow, that the free bus ride leaves at 6:45 in the morning. So it's I'm not a morning person. So
when does it leave? Jim, when does it leave?
I hate it. Are you going with that, by the way?
Yes, I am. I told you that already.
You're on the bus, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm on the bus.
Well, you're going to have a hard time getting up just like me.
Yeah. I may just stay up.
I know. It's insane. I know. I don't know why they planned it at 9 o'clock. I mean, they could have did an afternoon lobby, and that would have been plenty for me.
Well, it's a long day. I mean, they're gonna, I guess, head back at 3 p.m. So yeah, you got a whole day to walk around the Capitol and talk to a lot of people, not just your own person.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the Lobby Day. Are people talking just to their legislators?
Yeah, so the idea is, it's an interesting. I don't think I'm going to let any cats out of the bag here. I'll tell you. Inside thinking here is that obviously.
Oh yeah, give us the inside scoop, Jim. This is an exclusive.
They obviously have some people that are newly elected from the Socialist Party that see the world the way we do it in terms of what Israel is doing, and see this law in terms of we do it, or how we see it. But we believe that boycotting is a protected right. It's a free speech right. It's a First Amendment right, and based on that, there should be no law against boycotting based on First Amendment rights. You
Well,
make
I think I could make that argument, but I wouldn't make it on the basis of free speech. I'd make it on the basis of freedom of association, right? Because it's your right to disassociate yourself from someone.
it's yes. Well, actually, the
Both.
Wisconsin law is both that and a speech. Let me read to you something that that was passed out to us that we could to educate ourselves. And that's what you have been talking about, Gary, is the fact that you have to put something in your contract with the state about you'll never boycott Israel. And so that is a thing about speech. That's
Yes.
Well,
called,
I'm not sure from a legal standpoint that I necessarily agree with that. The state offers you a contract, and they put that language in the contract, and then you agree whether you want to sign it or not. I mean, but yeah,
but the point,
it does have a resemblance to forced speech, which obviously forced
that's right.
speech violates the
That's
First Amendment.
That's right. That's exactly what I was about to read. It says anti-boycott legislation that prohibits government contract often requires a written certification from the individual or entity submitting the bid, pledging they are not boycotting Israel and they will not do so for the duration of the contract. Some certification provisions specifically reference boycotts of Israel, frequently including territories controlled by Israel to reach boycotts of goods from illegal Israeli settlements. Others use broader language referring to boycotts of allied nations or jurisdictions with which the state enjoys open trade. As of November 2020, 24 states have anti-boycott laws with written certification requirements. While all anti-boycott laws raise First Amendment concerns because they single out individuals and entities for second-class treatment because of their political views, written certifications draw particular attention because they compel speech. And that's what I wanted to say. They compel speech, requiring would-be government contractors to take a position in favor of Israel.
Yeah, I mean,
They
I'm,
also,
I mean, I'm, not, I really, I mean, I'm just, I'm ignorant on this point. I do not know whether that is required in Wisconsin, because you're right. They have these BDS bills all over the country. They basically enacted as a sort of cookie cutter legislation. Groups like
yeah.
ALEC go around and they have
And for people who don't know, you should say what Alec, American Legislative Exchange Council, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
yes,
Yeah,
and they
okay, let me hold on 1 second. Ann Batiste, someone's calling me. I just got to tell them I'm on Zoom. Ann, I'm on
okay,
Zoom right
all right.
now.
That's fine.
I'll call you
just,
later.
yeah, that's fine. All right.
All right,
Yeah,
go
so,
ahead.
yeah. So ALEC is this sort of clearinghouse, for mostly pretty right wing legislation that they draft up and they distribute it to their like little
Well, Act 10 was
little,
Alec, wasn't it?
puppets all over the. Well, I mean, a lot of stuff like this is it's. I mean, it's like it gets modified for each state a little bit, so every state has something that's a little bit different. But it's basically they have one draft that they send out,
Yeah.
and then the people that do legislative drafting for the state. I mean, what happens in the state process is the legislature gets something in the mail from a lobbyist or someone like Alec and say, oh yeah, I'll submit this for you, and then they put it up and it winds up going through there's official people that are on the staff for the legislature that redraft things so they're in appropriate format for a Wisconsin piece of legislation or for a Wisconsin law. And so they will wind up modifying it, and they'll send the questions back to the person. Did you mean it to do this? Did you mean it to do that? And there'll be a little dialogue, and it'll result in a final piece of legislation. And then, of course, we'll go through the process. It might potentially get amended. Things get taken in, taken out of it, and so all the laws wind up being a little different from one place to another. But they're drafted from one central brain somewhere.
Yeah, it's not the brilliance of some Wisconsin legislators that came up with this. There's this. I don't know if you want to call it conspiracy, but there's a central command center for the extreme right wing, right? That drafts this legislation, and then the legislation is sent around the country to be enacted in all the various states.
And I don't know for a fact that this is ALEC legislation. This could be coming from like some
this
group.
was ALEC legislation.
Oh, this was. That. Okay.
Yes.
Because I could imagine it coming from some other group, that just wants this legislation and is promoting it all over the place, right?
No, that was actually one of our talking points with Democrats is, hey, this is ALEC legislation, which immediately should perk up of the Democrats because they know what ALEC is about.
Yeah, and and the fact that it was originally enacted by Scott Walker as an executive order is another point, because he's not a popular guy among Democrats. He's,
No, not among Democrats. But the idea.
I mean, I don't think he's very popular anyway. I mean,
At this point, I don't think so. No.
But
I mean,
again,
he's the guy when he ran for president said they asked him if he wanted to build a wall between the U.S. and Canada, and he said, well, I'd look into that.
Oh, jeez.
But no, you brought up another interesting insight, I think, is that let's say you had a pedophile or a company that was known for selling porn, child porn or whatever, and you wanted to boycott them. And you should have that right to boycott them. I think conservatives will understand that. If you have somebody committing some act that is highly immoral or illegal, you should have the right to say, I'm not going to do business with this person or with this company. I don't believe in that I should not be supporting this immoral, illegal activity with my dollars. I think conservatives would like that argument. Whether they want it to apply to Israel or not, that's another story. But the general concept that you should have the right to boycott something that's illegal or immoral, I think conservatives would agree with that. Don't you?
Yes, and I think that's a good way to approach it with them. Also, to say that, as a company, you should have the right to,
deal with who you want to deal with.
Yeah,
I mean,
without having to have this extra clause in there, Now,
if it's true that you're not dealing with somebody because of race, gender, a disability, that's a whole different story, right? That's a protected class. And you're not supposed to discriminate based on a protected class. That is a legal issue, right? But we're not discriminated against Israel because Israelis are a protected class. Or Jews, if you discriminated because Jews happen to live in Israel, that would be wrong.
Yes.
But that ain't the issue here. The issue is Israel is committing a crime, and you don't want to support the crime that they're committing, which is apartheid and which is now is genocide. I think that's the reason why we want to boycott Israel, not because they're Jewish.
Yeah, well, I think that's true of most people that want to boycott Israel. I think there are certainly more and more people now that are drifting into sort of old-fashioned anti-Semitism and see Israel as being in control of the U.S. government, and the Jews control everything, and so that it does get there are some people for whom there are some people for whom it is mixed in with sort of traditional anti-Semitism, but there are a lot. But
that's an interesting point. I talked to somebody. I won't say who or where this person lived. They didn't even live in Wisconsin, but somebody is a friend of mine and said, "Oh, yeah, it's because Jews control everything." And I thought, that's not a good argument because, first of all, it's not true. I mean, there's a lot of Jewish people who are very successful. That some of them because of extremely hard work and because they're smart and they work hard. But to say that there's a Jewish conspiracy controlling the world, that's something I think that Hitler used to try to eliminate the Jews. It's fascism, right? And we want to obviously stay away from that line of thinking.
Yeah, and that line is unfortunately coming back. But one of the reasons why it's coming back is because you have all of these, using anti-Semitism as an excuse to make power grabs, right? So things like this, and I'm sure this is another one of those pieces of legislation that they help push through, basically saying that this is like a protection against anti-Semitism. And when you say everything bad that you want to do is to protect Jewish people, it makes people dislike Jewish people, right? I mean, you're using Jewish people to sell bad things, right? And you are yourself being anti-Semitic when you pass these laws that are supposed to be anti-Semitic, right? Because you're just generating this false belief that Jews made you do it. And it's like a lot of Jews didn't want you to do it,
Exactly.
And it's like, no, you're not doing this for us. Leave us out of it. If you want to make a power grab and try your fascism here and take away people's rights and take away their free speech and their free association, you go ahead and do that, but leave us out. And so it's it's really it's not. counter anti-Semitic legislation. It really is, in that sense, anti-Semitic legislation.
That's very good. That's very good. That's very logical. I like that. That's good. That's so.
I mean, that argument won't carry you very far with real anti-Semites that you might meet on the Wisconsin legislature.
Yeah,
But
I mean, it's logical. It's true.
It is a good argument.
I mean, and here's one for conservatives too. It's like, look, you've got these rules that say, take the contract with the lowest bid, save the state some money, right? But if you encounter a bunch of organizations that all, don't bid on something because they'd rather not be associated with a genocide, and then you wind up having to pay a higher price to get someone who doesn't participate in the boycott, you're raising the price to taxpayers. You're potentially getting a less beneficial product at a higher price. It's
Right.
it's like why are we paying for this? Do we have a legislative assessment that says how much this bill is costing us in lost contract savings that we could have had by dealing with different companies instead of the ones we're dealing with?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I don't know how much economic damage is really being done to the state by this type of legislation, but certainly it's a new form of McCarthyism, right? That makes you take this pledge about it having a certain political.
And again, there's the language is in our legislation. It's in the contract, and so I don't think they need you to take like a separate certification for it. But there may be, but that would be in the rules somewhere. That might be in the way they implement it, but that's not actually in the legislation. The legislation says that the contract will
I
include
noticed
that
that
language.
too. I couldn't see that in the actual legislation. It must be in the way they implement the legislation.
Or it may be that just isn't the way they do it in Wisconsin. They do that in other states, but in our state it's just in the contract. So you have a slightly different legal question if it's in the contract and they the state drafts the contract and offers you the contract, and then it's your signature on a contract. That's a little bit different, than your declaration that you would make, that your certification would sort of, which that would be compelled speech. Maybe it's still compelled speech that it's in this thing. I think you have a stronger argument based on freedom of association, because I think you should have a freedom not to associate with people that are committing a genocide.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like why should you give up your right to free association in order to get a government contract?
So you're bringing an interesting meaning to the word association here. When I think of association, I think of people hanging out together and doing work, socializing together. But you're talking about association in terms of economics, an economic association.
Yeah, I don't want to do business with someone who's committing a genocide, right?
Right.
And so that's a form of association.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of the First Amendment interpreted where association applies to economic association, but I think that makes sense though. Have you heard?
Oh, I'll give them my money if I don't have to be in a room with them. I mean, I don't know. It seems to me like maybe there is an exception for that. I mean, I that's not an area of law that I'm super up on.
That's interesting.
I mean, and I mean, I don't know if there's. I mean, I also, if I were like looking at this to try to legally break it down, I'd also look through at the state constitution and look through like the home rule provisions and see if this improperly interferes with the rights of local governments to make their own decisions, because it does go and impact how local governments can make their own purchases. And it's
as I read this about this Act 248, and some of the language was in there to target universities. Obviously, we've seen a living example of that with the UW and UWM encampments, and people saying the encampments asking the university to disinvest in certain business entities that had relationships. I think some of the water entities had relationships with Israel, and the students wanted them to disinvest in those companies as long as they kept the relations with these Israeli companies, and Wisconsin perhaps saying that they can't do that, or I'm not clear. Maybe you followed it more than I do. So supposedly the UWM, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, had some pretty good language when the encampment ended in terms of complying with the wishes of the students. What'd you say, Babette?
They were seemingly willing to disassociate from that one project. But I don't know after that whether things changed. because
Well,
the
didn't,
university started rolling back on a lot of what they had agreed to.
that's my understanding too. Didn't the head of the University of Milwaukee, did he keep his job, or was he?
Oh no,
He
no,
was,
he stepped down. I think he's. I don't know if he's quite gone yet. It was right around this time.
I
It
mean,
was going to be like his last day, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
At the end of the
we just
semester.
had these series of interviews of chancellors or people who are applying to be the chancellor, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, because he announced that he was leaving, and it's like, it was kind of like everyone kind of thought, well, this is because of all this pressure against him and this this horrible. I mean, it was a horrible experience for him because he actually was pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of things you can criticize him for, but compared to a lot of these university presidents that were really eager to like bring in people to crack heads, he didn't see any particular purpose of like generating a ton of bloodshed bloodshed, right outside Mitchell Hall, and it's like that wasn't,
Right.
and so there was a peaceful resolution to this whole thing. The encampments ended. They made some very reasonable concessions that a lot of people on the campus would agree with. It did rankle the president of the UW system a little bit, who was a bit more of a sort of Zionist stooge and wanted
to do the head cracking.
wanted to see Kent State all over Wisconsin and couldn't quite get it. So yeah, no. So it's he left. It was apparently pretty uncomfortable for him on all sides. And
so the point being, in terms of what we're discussing tonight, if UWM actually did disinvest in this Israeli company as an agreement to end the encampments, would they be violating this rule then, the Act 248, this Anti BDS legislation?
I don't think there's anything in the legislation that would keep them from divesting. Right, because it's an even though it's written as an anti-BDS, it's really just about purchases from the state. So it's really an anti-boycott, not doesn't really affect divestment or sanctions as far as I read the statute. Now I may be wrong about that, but as far as I can see, you could like end academic exchanges with Israel, and you could step off of committees, like the Water Council that have Israeli members on them, and just refuse to associate, as long as it wasn't concerning your purchase of products, right? Because when you buy products or services, it comes under the statute. You have to bid for who's going to provide those products or services, and there's this rule that now says, you have to pick the bid that comes from the company that is the lowest bid that meets all the terms, and one of the terms is that they can't have a boycott against Israel. So, you have basically exclude those people from the bidding process, and you can't buy from them. But there's nothing in it particularly about where you invest your endowment, or maybe that's
research you do,
or what research you do, or who you whether you're going to send students to Israel on foreign exchange programs and have them tour the occupied territory.
I think they still do, actually.
Yeah. I mean, well, actually, I think they think that one of the things the students wanted to end the university says, well, we don't have any of those currently, right? We just don't have.
Okay.
They didn't enact a ban on them, but they said, well, there's none of them to stop right now.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about.
Didn't they have a program where UWM students went to Israel for credit in some program?
They used to, at least. That's why I thought they still did.
Yeah, I mean.
So that is obviously, if you're going to Israel to interact with their colleges or to learn about their businesses, there's some sort of economic gain for Israel here, and so if you stop that, and because Israel is committing genocide,
it may not add up to that high amount, though, right?
Well, yeah, and it's there is the amount limitation, and it's also, I mean, a lot of these things, it's like, are you there's an economic benefit for Israel, but are you purchasing a service from Israel, or are you simply just, you have a program to facilitate students to go over there and they may spend money in Israel, but that's not the university spending state money on those things. That's, that's, you're giving the students credit for something that they go through that happens to
Well,
have them spend money.
I mean, they're living somewhere when they're doing that, and it could be state money that's enabling the students to do that, and some sort of scholarship or some sort of. I mean, they could be using public funds to help with these exchanges or tours to Israel. I'm sure it may not be all student money; it could be college money too. No, or university money too.
I mean, if the state was going to say, well, we want to spend some money on housing students, and we're going to take a bid from different places offering housing, and it's like, well, if you were offering housing in Jordan and you expected the students to be in Israel, you probably wouldn't accept that because it wouldn't meet your terms because it's in the wrong place, and the students wouldn't be able to walk to home anymore, right? I mean, I think there's you can try to stretch this statute to apply to different situations. I think and on one level, I think if you were a business, you could just say, well, I don't have a policy of boycotting Israel. I've just made a determination that there is never any business with Israel that will work to the economic benefit of my company, and therefore, for strictly economic reasons, I'm not going to deal with them, right? If you made that determination, you're theoretically in the loophole in the law, and it's like you can still get state contracts because you're not technically boycotting them. It doesn't count in the things that you're making just a rational business decision. It's like, well, I've decided I'm making a rational business decision not to ever deal with Israel, right? I think because I can sell that. I can put ads that say, our company, come to us. We don't deal with Israel, right? And that it's actually a business benefit for us. It's not done on moral grounds. It's just done on economic grounds. And I think if you can say that you're doing it on economic grounds, technically you're in a loophole there. But one of the issues that you have with legislation like this, right, is that you might be doing it strictly on economic grounds, but if it looks suspiciously like you might have a moral soul and not want to murder children, then then some DA somewhere can come at you about this, or the state can come at you about this, or someone can cancel your contract, so someone can do something about it. I mean, someone could. I mean, I guess the Attorney General's office could come after you with fraud for applying for this and lying about your boycott status, right?
So just like UWM canceled their business with the church across the street, right, with Zal Church, because Zal Church happened to support the encampments and let the people in the encampments use the church to freshen up, go to the bathroom, hold meetings and things like that. And because my understanding of, maybe it wasn't made a public statement, but it's amazing to my understanding that the classes that were held in Zal Church by the university ended after Zal Church got engaged with the encampment.
I did not realize that the university had done that.
Yes.
Yeah, I realized that there was a break in that relationship, and that it left Zhao in a kind of a financial hole.
I knew they were in financial difficulties, but I wasn't sure exactly.
It was part of the reasons why is the UWM canceling holding some sort of activities over there, and that's why they had a fundraiser for Zal Church to try to offset some of this investment by the university in Zal Church.
I mean, I don't know if you have direct knowledge whether that is explicitly the reason, but I would certainly speculate that would be the case regardless.
I mean,
yeah,
Zal was doing a nice thing by opening the place to students who,
Well, of course it was the right moral thing to do. You're supporting people who want to end genocide, and it can't be any more moral than that, right?
I would think.
Yeah,
And they were a religious group that you'd think they would do things on a moral basis.
You would think.
Well,
right.
then again, it's the religious groups that are corralling people and bringing them to Christian Zionism too.
Well, yeah,
so it's like
It's true. Christian.
I mean, religion is real. I mean, you can do
bag,
wonderful
right?
things with religion, and you can do horrible things with
Right.
religion.
That's right. That's right. But the other, even if you don't, skipping all the economics, just forgetting completely about the economics. In my opinion, having such an anti-boycott law a form of indoctrination, similar to try to make people feel that somehow Israel is being mistreated and discriminated against, and they're victims rather than oppressors. And that's what also bothers me about the legislation. Even if they had zero impact on anybody's economics, the fact that we're being indoctrinated to think of Israel in a certain way as good guys when they're actually acting as very bad guys right now is one of the things that bothers me.
Yeah, why do we need legislation in Wisconsin to protect the state of Israel? I mean, it's and it's not like we have similar laws to protect the Burundi or Argentina or Ireland or
Right. This is the only country.
Yeah.
Although it was also pointed out that one of the
maybe we can just modify the law and say, well, take out the word Israel and substitute People's Republic of China.
There would be a lot of conservatives who would like that.
I mean, you really only need to change one word in the statute and to fix it, right?
Or you can put in Venezuela.
Antarctica. That'll have like the minimal negative impact on anybody because they don't really have a sovereign state or any economy there, right?
No, but actually,
I mean, we don't import any goods from Antarctica, not even snow.
No, but people argue that this legislation is dangerous because you can do exactly that, is substitute for the word Israel. In fact, people have proposed in the state of Wisconsin applying this anti-BDS legislation to buying oil. So to fossil fuel industry, that you cannot boycott the fossil fuel industry. So it's not just Israel. It can be applied to other right-wing conservative causes that you do not want people to boycott.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get away with it in this area, right, that you can say that you don't have the freedom to associate with whoever you want to in your business relations. If you can't boycott someone that you don't want to deal with for like moral reasons.
Can't boycott because of their nuclear policy, right, or like you said, oil or something.
And then
the other one that's been used for is handguns, or you cannot. So because some people don't want to boycott somebody, a handgun maker, for instance. So if you insert the handgun manufacturers or weapons manufacturers in there, you could get something that.
Or I don't want to buy cheese from a company that produces cigarettes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right.
Make that type of decision illegal.
Right. Exactly. That it can be used for that purpose too. In fact, in some states, it has been used for that purpose. They put in some other anti-boycott legislation, just using the same concept, same idea. It's a dangerous way of, again, indoctrinating people, forcing people not to use their right to associate, or use your term, Gary, associate with who they want to associate economically.
Yeah, let me ask you, since we've got a little over 5 minutes left here, and I think we've covered a lot of ground here. Have you got other talking points from that little handout of yours that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, they talked about all the boycotts that have been part of U.S. history. The colonists protesting taxes imposed by the British, boycotted English tea.
Oh, yeah.
The tea going overboard.
The founding fathers were really strong opponents of tariffs. They would throw you in the harbor if you proposed a tariff. Make America great again. Get rid of all tariffs.
There you go.
381-day Montgomery bus boycott resulted in the desegregation of the public transportation system in that city. More recently, groups from all political perspectives have organized boycotts to bring about change, boycotting Target, Budweiser, Gillette, the Hallmark Channel, TripAdvisor, and Hobby Lobby. So boycotts are protected activity. In 1982, the Supreme Court, in the case NAACP versus Claiborne Hardware, stated the established elements of speech, assembly, association, and petition are inseparable. Through the exercise of these First Amendment rights, petitioners sought to bring about political, social, and economic change. The same is true for the BDS movement. So it's an American tradition to use
It
the
is,
boycott.
and I mean, you can think of, I mean, people who had a very similar movement when they were opposing apartheid in South Africa, or
That's right.
Yeah.
boycotting the grapes.
That's right.
for
Did,
the- you
labor
know.
union
Well, you've had right wing boycotts on the other side, boycotting Bud Light and Disney and so forth, right? You know, and it's
and why did they boycott Budweiser and Disney?
but they didn't like the fact that they had some like trans woman on a Bud Light commercial once, right? So, they all went crazy and pulled out their hair and like like smashed all their cans of Bud Light and send out TikToks for it. It's like, well, okay, that's some less Bud Light on the market. I guess there's more demand now. There's less supply. I mean, some of this stuff was crazy. I mean, I think you have had companies that have deliberately tried to stoke antagonism to their own brand so that they would trigger like one of these destroy your Nikes campaigns, because they wind up giving them so much free press and they wind up selling so many more Nikes than get destroyed.
That's interesting.
I mean, I mean, some of these movements have been spectacular failures, but others have been dramatically successful. And you're right to bring up South Africa, because I think the BDS movement against Israel is like largely just drawn from South Africa. Right? That was their model for putting this whole thing together. And how that turned out. You wound up with like Nelson Mandela.
That sounds pretty good. I want to ask, before it ends, if people want to get involved in this, how do they get involved?
Is it too late to get on the bus?
Exactly.
It's leaving
It's
tomorrow.
not. You know what? They cut off formal registration. But my argument is, look, we're going to have a press conference. The more people you have at a press conference, the better. If you go around with some of the groups that are lobbying, you don't have to be one of the speakers. You can just be there showing your support. And so if anybody's listening, if you show up at 7 a.m, if you have enough courage to get up at that early in the morning and show up at 25th in Wisconsin to ride the bus to go to Madison, I'm certainly not going to turn you away.
This is in back of or near what church?
United Methodist Church, Central United Methodist Church.
We should say we're recording this on we're actually live right now, but it is Tuesday, April 22nd as we're here. So if you listen to this program, when it's rerun at some other point, and we talk about the bus leaving tomorrow, there may be no bus leaving tomorrow. You have to be hearing it live, because pretty soon the buses are going to be gone.
It's April 23rd.
We are 9 hours away from the bus leaving as we go out here live. So, if you listen to this later, the bus is gone.
The bus is gone. Don't go down there. At least not to catch a bus to Madison.
Yeah.
You can take an infant. You can take the.
I mean, the church won't be
bus.
open at that hour. You won't be able to get in and worship. There's nothing you can do. You just there's McDonald's next door, right? You can go to the McDonald's.
I think you guys made it hang out at it.
But no, because the McDonald's is being boycotted.
That's right.
Oh, hey, why are we supposed to? They opened up a new coffee shop here. Why are we supposed to boycott? What's the famous coffee shop?
Starbucks?
Yeah.
Starbucks. Why are we boycotting Starbucks?
I don't know, but you can go to BDS and they'll tell you.
Yeah, I guess you couldn't go. I guess
We'll have to catch that on the next time we have you on.
We're gone. Thanks.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.